We knew we wanted to show this work. It was a major work. It was the only mechanized piece that Oldenburg ever made. And we knew it required a great deal of conservation. And it seemed a real shame. I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic, but almost a tragedy to have this major work in our collection that was basically unexhibitable.
The ice bag has undergone a very careful restoration. And I've been watching as the people have been creeping in and out and making it work the way I hope it will work. When you look at it from the outside, you don't see all the little things that are making it work. It's sort of like a human being in that respect. They got some very good people to study it. They are coming very close to what the original intentions were for the movement of the bag, which is to say it moves up and it moves down, it twists one way, then another way, and then it inflates when the air is pumped into it, and then it deflates. So it relaxes, it pumps up, and it turns. And all this is a kind of rhythm, a program which is very interesting to watch.
I am an art conservator working for modern and contemporary art. We are opening the Oldenburg exhibition at the Whitney, and we are in the process of completing the piece. The ice bag arrived as a newly made work of art in the Whitney's collection without knowing that it is not working properly. As a consequence, directly from 1971 on, the Whitney has files and files of reports of all kinds of misbehavior of the ice bag. It is described in the files as a suicidal piece, a creature which is moody, it is making funny noises, it is steaming, fuming, goes up into flames, and all kinds of problems. In terms of treating as a project like this, we always start with trying to figure out what has happened and looking into all kinds of documentation and files which might exist. The scope of work is quite large and complex. Consequently, the conservation process, working on it, becomes much more complicated. We have to look at the mechanical, electrical, and all of other aspects also as heritage. Perhaps not visual art heritage, but technical heritage. We do a complete investigation about the materials, about the parts and pieces. It is very similar actually to forensic work. To be able to complete a project like that, we need quite a unique team. We need people who are not only the very best in their own specific field, let's say an electrician or a toolmaker, they also have to have the special ability to be very creative and at the same time understand conservation principles.
I design and build hi-fi equipment. I repair musical instruments and I play music. I would say that I was probably the initial archaeologist. I spent several days reviewing all the earlier documentation and a couple of days looking at the machine itself and trying to assess what was wrong with it and what needed to be done. So originally I was going to just rebuild it from the electrical standpoint as it was originally and realized that it needed a lot more than that.
I'm an electrical engineer. The work I usually do is involving motors and controls. I did all the electrical components to control the motions of the motors. We did some minor repairs of the motors, supplied all the electrical parts to replace the old parts, and assembled everything with Steve together, and supplied a set of blueprints for the new system.
I'm an auto body restorer. I restore classic automobiles and work on specialty automobiles. When you restore a classic automobile, you have to undo, what has been done to it. So you have to try to see past that to what the artist or the coach builder was trying to project when they built it and get back to that. Most things, such as the ice bag sculpture, no one documents a paint code. So really what you're trying to do is you have to make it from scratch. There was a lot of inconsistencies when I started to strip back the layers. And what we did with it is we stripped back the damaged areas, repaired them, and then refinished the entire piece after matching the paint.
I'm a guitar builder, so when this came up, there was a need for a seat of the pants engineer, so I'm qualified. Within the bag are hundreds and hundreds of electrical and mechanical components that conspire to produce the movement. The electrical components are one system and the mechanical another system, but they interact and perform the robotic function. So I address the mechanical needs of the sculpture.
I work for architects and designers, and we do custom sewing. We were responsible for the bag part, all the fabric part. So we had the original to work with, and we couldn't take it apart. That was the tricky part. So we had to create a pattern without disturbing it, and then figure out how it was put together and sew it. We're used to working with a lot of fabric, but a lot of fabric that was dead weight was more difficult. It couldn't be pinned. So all the traditional ways of holding something while you try to sew it, we couldn't use any of those. We like challenges a lot, and it was a challenge.
I think the thing that was really interesting for me is that Claes sort of embraced the notion of working with people who knew so much more than he did about a subject and bringing in something about which he had no knowledge. He really enjoyed the idea that all of this time and energy and all of this expertise was put into something as simple and prosaic as an ice bag that doesn't do anything more than, as he described it, a leaf blowing in the wind.